He couldn't get hard, and she has shamed him. We don't think in our 20s how much of an impact that experience had on him and himself.
They're not getting enough sex, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's often men that reach out to me. Getting a game for a man, how can I turn her on that much that she is so wet already without needing? So there's actually statistics seeing that strippers actually make more money when they're so much more hornier, a lot more turned on. But it's not just the period of...
When I was able to do that, the girls would tell me, most guys don't pay this much attention. And then I'm like getting referral business. Like random girls would hit me up and they'd be like, hey, I heard Katie or whoever said you had a nice apartment. I was wondering if I could stay over for a few days. I'm like, who are you again?
Most women orgasm from women. You make a woman orgasm. And when you're like, you can feel that connection, that pleasure there, she's going to want more of it.
Okay, you are about to watch an interview with me and intimacy coach Katie Ora. If you are a single guy or if you're a guy in a relationship, you're going to learn some secrets about how to get a woman off. You'll learn about how to be intimate and present during sex so you can enjoy it even more. You're going to learn how to give women the type of pleasure that they so rarely receive from men, that you'll stand out from all your competition. If you're a woman, we also go into the topic of how to have freedom in your sexual energy, how to have satisfying orgasms, the steps that are needed to free your mind and your body and enjoy sex in a healthy way. Towards the end of the video, we talk about sexual health, the reality that at some point, every couple has some health issue that prevents them from enjoying sex and sharing sexual pleasures with their partners, and what to do when you get into those situations. We talk about somatic therapy, trigger point therapy, sexual health, the mental and physical techniques to free your mind and enjoy sex in a healthy way. Okay? If you're a single guy, chances are you are, if you're watching my channel, I would pull out the notepad and start taking notes, because if you start practicing the things we talk about in this video, you're going to stand out so far ahead of your competition in terms of how to satisfy women. Let's get into the video. Enjoy.
Katie Ora, welcome. So glad to have you. I don't do a lot of interviews on my channel, but you were fascinating to me because you're a private intimacy coach. Explain to the people that don't know what that is.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. A private intimacy coach. I work with high profiles who have created the businesses. They've got the empire, they've got the cars, they've got the property, they've got the kids and the schedules and the dog, but that intimacy has taken a back seat. Often in high profile couples and individuals, there's so much go, go, go. They often switch off from feeling, switch off from feeling the pleasure, switch off from feeling connected. And so I help them bring that back in a calm, fun, juicy way so they can actually want to desire each other again. Or if it's just men as well, they're wanting to actually like, oh, do you know what? I actually do want a relationship, or I do want to invest myself into connecting and dating as well. And so I do that obviously in a small, intimate, private way, because it's a tough subject that not everyone wants to, broadcast about what goes on in that intimacy way. So I really bring a non-judgmental, shame-free way of approach to intimacy. And I have a very expanded background through sexuality, conscious sexuality, tantra, conscious relating, intimacy in many different levels, polyamory, swinging. So I bring a lot of uniqueness into my approach and a lot of openness, because the subject can be juicy and fun. It doesn't need to be hard and uncomfortable. But when we allow ourselves to really like, oh, okay, like this is so normal, life, it gets a lot more juicier in with the connection with the relationship or individually as well.
Yeah, I hear you. A lot of people feel like sex is dirty or it's not supposed to be talked about. And I feel like a lot of the jobs of like intimacy coaches is to bring light into that conversation. Like it's not something they're embarrassed about, or not something you should feel guilty of. We're all human. We all have that side of us. I'm curious, do guys usually come to you so let's say it's a powerful person. Is it always a guy or is it always a girl? Is it more common that powerful men come to you first?
Yeah, it's often men that reach out to me. But the first, whether they're, I guess for couples, they would reach out and say, Katie, I'm struggling to have the conversation with my wife around intimacy, help. And it generally often starts like that. Maybe they've tried a range of things over the months, the years, to try and instigate that conversation of intimacy. And they only know that one way of that skill. And when I bring, obviously I'm a woman, so I bring a deep understanding for a man about women, just a few changes in the conversation, the tone of the voice, the time what you approach the conversation, it really, really shifts a lot.
What is the main concern? Is there one top concern, that they're not getting enough sex, or is there something else?
It's often long-term relationships that I predominantly work with. Long-term relationships, I'm talking 15 years plus, or single men. They're kind of the two categories. And in long-term relationships, it's often there's deep love is still there, the passion, the kids, everything, but they've just got a little bit stale in the bedroom. You know, they've been having sex together for 15 years, and amongst the stress and everything that comes in life, at the 15 years in a relationship, generally the children are a little bit older, and they come back to a space of, okay, we've had the kids, the business is running, what about us? And that's when they're wanting to reignite the spark and have pleasure and just a different way of approaching love and sex in a roundabout way. And I also do private couples retreats in that as well. So in Thailand, I host private retreats where couples maybe come in from Singapore or Australia, and they'll come and spend 2 to 3 days with me. And at the end of those 3 days, it's like, whoa, okay, I actually want my wife again. Like, wow, I actually want to rip her clothes off. And just a few switches really reignite that long-term love into sex and intimacy that they've still got there. It's just kind of been forgotten about.
I mean, we can dive into the whole topic of like how to turn on intimacy once, 15 years into it. But you said single men also reach out to you?
Yeah.
Why did they reach out to you?
I think because I'm so open and I'm so naturally honest in a way of helping them understand what a woman needs. Like a common one that I see is like, Katie, she really liked it last week and she was so into me. And this week, like, she doesn't even want to know who I am. And for a man, he can feel rejected. He can feel like embarrassed. It's like, why is this happening? I've just given everything to her. I've done everything in this date. It's gone really well. And then a couple of weeks later, it's on a different page. And the biggest thing that I love teaching and giving to men is just this simple understanding of a woman's body is functioned so differently to a man's body. And I feel it's such like an underrated topic that can change so much when a man comes to understand a couple of things about a woman's body, a woman's how she reacts, what she needs, how she responds. And the way that I like to describe that is a man is like a microwave. A microwave can just switch it on and switch it off. It's a bit fast. Whereas a woman, her body is like an oven. She needs time to warm up. And so if a man is just automatically switching himself on, thinking he's going to come into the bedroom and she's just automatically going to be turned on and she's not, that's when he feels that he's rejected, or he's not doing a good enough job, or he can't please her. So he starts getting in his head and thinking what he's doing is not right. But all that was really needed is to have the understanding, like, oh, okay, she takes a little bit more to warm up. So how can we warm her up together? So then it comes into the juicy sex, not thinking that she turns herself on like a microwave as well. A woman's body needs at least 10 to 20 minutes to actually be fully aroused. And as a man, I'd love for the men listening to really take this in. If a man can have sex and intimacy without needing lube, he has just ticked all the boxes. Because if a woman can naturally produce the lubrication, she is so turned on and she won't even need the lube. So it's like getting a game for a man. How can I turn her on that much that she is so wet already without needing lube? And that is a big, I love the guys to take away that.
Okay, how do you do that as a single guy?
Yeah, so first one is not rushing. So men often get into the bedroom, like I said, we just want to go straight in. How can you take an extra 1 or 2 minutes just to build the arousal, to build the anticipation? And by that, I mean like touching her on the back of her neck, maybe putting a blindfold on, kissing her lips, but then coming away, then coming back in, and then come to her ear, and building building the arousal before you actually coming down to sex and to penetration. This is, for a woman, this is like, it's teasing. Also for the man, it's like, oh, I want it, but he's not there. But can I give it more? Ooh. And that adds foreplay and play. And so that's step one, to start igniting that energy first. Then we're going to come into, I guess, but just before that, I'd add a little bit of outside of the bedroom foreplay. So this happens a lot through communication. Let's say you've gone throughout the day and all you've spoken about is the groceries, the bills, or, you know, I guess the logistics of life. But how throughout the day can you add in a cheeky message, a cheeky photo, or babe, I can't wait to see you tonight, or what color underwear are you wearing, or I can't wait to have the shower with you. Just something that's going to start igniting her into her feelings. Because if she is going throughout the day thinking about the logistics of life, she's got no time to feel. And so if you can instigate that throughout the day, that's already step one done. So then when you're coming into the bedroom, you slowing down, naturally adding that teasing. You've got 2 steps there where she's already warmed up. And then into that third one, to create that natural lubrication, is spending a bit more time, I say, on pussy massage, on yoni massage, in a way that's teasing and playful. So like, you know, just massaging her vulva, then you pass over the clitoris, because that's where most women are aroused from. But then you come off the clitoris, massage her inner thighs, the lower part of her stomach, then come back over the clitoris. So you're teasing again, but she's going to feel, oh, wow, okay, like this is like invigorating in her body. And naturally, then she'll feel more turned on, more aroused, more alive, to go in for penetration, rather than just you've both come home from work, you're getting into the bedroom and you're expecting it to go in. Like if she's not open, nothing's going to get in there. And if you need extra lube, she's not going to feel really relaxed. And so those 3 steps are probably like, the 3 steps that I'd have a go at for those men listening into next time, to really arouse the woman without just thinking I need to get it in there and just use lube.
Okay, great. I heard a couple of things. I heard push and pull, kind of the teasing. Maybe we'll do it, maybe we won't. Just a little bit of tease. I heard anticipation. So building up the anticipation throughout the day that, hey, I'm going to come home, I'm going to do this, and it'll be fun. I think for single men also, a lot of times they're dry for a long time. And then like one day they go out with their friends and this one girl likes them. He's like, finally, I get to not be dry. And he's very anxious, or he feels very needy. And I always tell guys, when you're there with the girl, take a moment and stop and say, hey, are you okay? Because it's the first time she's with you. And just that one verbal cue just lets her know that I'm allowing you to be comfortable before I proceed. Okay. And a lot of guys are just so eager to put it in. And I'm like, slow down. It's not. First of all, penetrative sex is not even, we'll talk about this later, but a lot of women can't actually orgasm through just penetrative sex. But for men, it's like they get it in, they get it out, they're happy, and then they're like, okay, are we done? And the girl's like, I haven't even started. Let's go in. I think I took a year of like tantra and sex training when I was learning dating. And I was surprised at so many of the things that I had to learn about women and men too. But I would say most men are the same, but not all men are the same. And most women are different. I know some girls who can orgasm completely differently, and another girl is like the opposite. She needs a totally different type of stimulation. Others need more mental stimulation. So it's all over the board. And I think to get good with women, you have to know how to please different types of women if you're going to be single for a while.
And I think on that, it's like being able to have the ability to communicate and to ask questions.
Yeah.
Like you said, every woman is different. So every experience when a single man is coming into the bedroom, not expecting that she is going to function, feel, and orgasm like the previous woman or the woman before or his ex-partner.
Yeah.
Every woman is different. And being able to support that is just getting curious. It's like asking questions. Do you like nipple play? Do you prefer to be in touch behind the back of your neck? Do you want me to dirty talk into your ear? Are you more internal play, more external play? And that conversation, like I said earlier, builds that anticipation. and builds like, okay, he's actually interested in me. You know, he's giving me signs that, okay, this is potentially going to go somewhere. And then she will be a lot more interested and attracted to the experience over them thinking, okay, like, let's say she's just an object, where it's about the whole experience of pleasure, not just like it has to be a chore in a way.
Yeah, I always ask the girl when we're already kind of have an agreement, let's say we're on a date and we're in bed and we have this agreement that, okay, we're gonna hook up. I always ask her, how do you usually orgasm? And then a lot of guys are like, no, they're so alpha. They're like, you should know what to do. And I'm like, no, every girl is different. So it's actually good to actually stop and ask her, how to use your orgasm? Because then she'll tell you what gets her off. And you would be surprised at the answers. Once I started asking that question, I got all sorts of answers from different. One girl said, just massage my breasts. Another girl said, I can only go through clitoral stimulation. Another girl said, you know, other things. So it was all over the board. I even found that asking this question on a date really helped. I would say, if the date's going really well, I would say, hey, if we ended up hooking up tonight, how would you feel about it? And I noticed that most women who were cool with it, they would say, oh, I feel great about it. And if she said, no, I would feel as though too soon, I would respect it and I wouldn't push for it for that date. And actually, ironically, that increased my close rate because it showed that I actually cared about, you know, where she was at in her timeline. The other thing I wanted to ask you was, I noticed ovulation cycles too once I started. I didn't pay attention in sex ed class, but I had to relearn it as an adult. And I'm like, when a girl's like her cheeks are flushed or when she's showing more skin closer to that 14 to 17 day cycle, it's more likely that she'll hook up with you, right? What's your understanding of how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you've shared this and that you're teaching your men the variety of like a woman's cycle. It's kind of like I like explain this one, like a man's body is like the sun. So, you know, the sun just wakes up and the sun goes to sleep. The sun wakes up every day on a 24-hour cycle. Whereas a woman's body, it's like a little bit like the oven. A woman's body is like the moon. She'll gradually open towards that full ovulation and then she'll gradually close off, and then she'll repeat that cycle over a month. So it also adds into when a man can potentially feel rejected at times in the month when she's not ovulating, when she's not turned on, when she's not magnetic, and not to take it personally, but just to understand this is the biology of a woman. So there's actually statistics seen that strippers actually make more money when they're ovulating because of how turned on and how magnetic they are. So it really, really is a thing at that time of the month. A woman, when she's ovulating, it's her body is in a way that she's ready and she's open, but when she must feel safe and protected, because at the end of the day, you know, the ovulation is when the egg is dropping and then when creation can happen. So for a woman's body, if you go back into the cave days, she would be there. I was like, okay, where am I going to land? Who can I feel safe with? And so for a man to approach a woman, especially around the time of ovulation, she wants to feel safe. Her body is producing, her body is moving, and her body is going through internal internal shifts in her hormones, going through hormones. And if a man is approaching, maybe feeling like he's not present, he's on edge, he's kind of trying to go around the sides, she's not going to feel safe and she's not going to naturally open. Whereas a man can bring presence, she will just naturally flow into her body. And generally women can feel if they're really connected to their body when they're ovulating, and they're so much more hornier, a lot more turned on. But it's not just the period of ovulating, it's also often what I see within women, it's also after the period has ended, into the second week in the follicular phase, coming from the follicular phase, because it's when she's more connected, when she's more creative, when she's more turned on, and then that really builds up into that ovulating phase. And when she hits that moment, that's the moment when she might want to be like having rough doggy sex, or when her hair is pulled, or when she wants to try some new BDSM, or she wants to go to a sex club. That is the time of the month to try those things, because like the week that's coming after, that's when you probably want, you know, her lying on her side and just really slow, romantic being fed chocolate sex, or a calmer experience than, you know, like, let's have the hair pulled and let's go to town within that. So it's really important to understand how that can shift throughout the cycle as well.
Right. Comfortable, safe sex and rough sex, two different modes. But no, on the men's self-dev side, we learn to look for like changes in a woman's physical, like her voice gets softer, her actually cheeks flushes. There's actually studies where her voice actually changes pitch when she's ovulating. And also the hormones are changing too, and the way she behaves also changes. So I always I don't know if this is too much, but I always tell my clients, like, if you meet a girl in that period, just be cool. Just don't mess it up. You don't need to try that hard. Just be comfortable. Whereas when she's not in that period, you actually have to build the attraction a little bit more because she's not in that mindset automatically.
Yeah.
Okay.
A woman can feel it, like, and I can also use myself for example, you know, when let's say if I'd walk into a room, so if I've got my period or in the luteal phase, maybe I walk into a room and you're a bit more reserved, you're a bit more closed off. But in that follicular ovulation phase, you can walk into a room, you can stand on that stage and on the stage and everyone thinks you're Beyonce. And because the attraction that naturally comes, I personally am not too sure about the voice, but it's about it's kind of like bees around honey. When you're honey walking into the room, you can naturally feel it, and the men can pick that up in with you as well. So you've got to be like, for the women, know how to be using it. But I guess for the men listening is like, yeah, exactly what you said. Noticing that, okay, is now my time to kind of like jump in, or is she a little bit more reserved?
I think the players pick that up well because they have a lot of practice. Whereas the nerdy guys, they sometimes miss it. They're just like, huh, what?
He's like, is she really hitting on me right now? Like, is she really like touching me? Or like, wow, okay, she's definitely activated. Yeah. And sometimes it always doesn't need to lead to penetration. It's such a good moment, I guess, for the nerdy guys to explore and to experiment with flirting, and just like building their confidence in having the ability to speak to a woman, because you're more likely going to speak to you at that phase than when at the other phase of the month. And I let them to have like, okay, I'm just experimenting, exploring right now, like bonus points if I end up taking it home this evening. But how can I build my confidence through engaging with a female in this way when she is in that phase of the month?
Yeah, that's good. Okay, I want to talk about orgasms because I think a lot of guys don't understand this. A lot of single men don't understand this. So I did some research this morning before our call. I didn't know this, actually. I thought that numbers were higher. Apparently, only 18 to 25% of women orgasm from intercourse alone. The rest actually need some type of clitoral stimulation. Are you familiar with this data?
Yes, it's the most women orgasm from external stimulation. And that's often because there's 8,000 nerve endings in the clitoris. Like, the clitoris is there just for pleasure. Whereas internal, you know, this is where we produce from, this is where we bleed from. There's a lot more happening inside the body. Whereas a clitoris, its only job is to feel pleasure. And so it's a lot more easier to activate and connect with that part than from internal stimulation as well.
Yeah, interesting. I always tell people when I teach them one-on-one, if they're worried about this, I think of the clitoris as a tiny penis. Yeah, and then I'm like, I'm not gay or anything, but if I were to give oral sex to a girl, that's how I think about it. And I've noticed that once I learned how to do oral sex properly with women, that my orgasm rate went from like 30%, assuming they weren't faking it, to like 80-90%. There's still that 10% that have difficulty with orgasm in general, like they never had it before, or it's very hard for them. But I would say just focusing on like oral sex using the clitoris, I got my close rate to above 80%. But most men don't do that, or they don't know how to do it, or they never focus on figuring out how to do that.
They think that, you know, penetration is the goal, and often for a man completely. Yet, like I said earlier, a woman needs that stimulation. A woman needs the arousal. And I think for a man, like I would suggest exploring, like, you have hands and a mouth. you know, like explore with your hands and a mouth before you're using, you know, the penis to go inside. And it really teaches you, okay, same again about the different woman, because you could be using just your fingers and she's getting so aroused and so excited. And then on another woman, she might want more tongue and more of like a slower touch. And so with a woman, like say for a man, whether he's using his hands or his mouth, when a woman, she's making the noises, she's making those, she's like, oh, yes, babe. Yes, babe. When she's getting to that point, it's really important for the man to continue what he's doing to support her reaching that orgasm and not change. I think a lot of men rush this procedure and thinking, okay, this is my moment. How do I make it work? How do I get her off? I'm going really fast. When that can work when she is aroused, but before we get her aroused, you've got to take those steps of warming her up. And it's like, you know, the more foreplay, the more anticipation that you've got there, that's going to be then stimulating the pelvic floor blood flow in her body. You need the blood flow in a pelvic floor region and around the clitoris to be able to get that stimulation there. This comes through exploring, questioning, and getting to a moment or a movement that's just like, okay, I'm really getting there. I'm really getting there. And a simple one for like men, maybe learning on this is using the two fingers and kind of massaging above the clitoral hood and then below. So it's kind of like up, down, or from left to right, but not just focusing straight away just on the clitoris, but exploring the clitoral hood as well, because this also builds up that anticipation, and it might be as less sensitive before you're really coming in for the win.
Yeah, good. I don't know if I can put this on YouTube, but I usually use the tongue lightly, and then you go more heavy once she's more used to the sensation. And then once it's kind of roller coaster ride, once you hit that tipping point where she's like, you know, it's gonna happen, then you just keep the pace. You don't have to be super fast. You just have to be steady. And then it kind of, the roller coaster comes, and then you know, okay, I got it. Yeah. I usually count in my head. I'm very mechanical when it comes to, but yeah. But it was nice once I figured that out, because well, it's my younger days, but I was like, oh, finally I feel like I can unlock this game 80-90% of the time. And it almost became like a challenge for me to like figure it out each time. And each time it was a different game. It was a different variation of things. But I found that when I was able to do that, the girls would tell me most guys don't pay this much attention. And then I was like getting referral businesses. So I lived in San Diego at the time, and then like random girls would hit me up and they'd be like, hey, I heard Katie or whoever said you had a nice apartment. I was wondering if I could stay over for a few days. I'm like, who are you again? And this happened for like a year or two. Yeah, but I was in player mode that time. But it just felt good to like have that ability to give pleasure, I think. And I took pleasure in giving pleasure. Yeah. I think a lot of guys miss that. They just think about themselves. They're like, well, what do I get out of this? And I'm like, oh, great, it's a chore. I have to do this now. I don't, it's so much work. I didn't feel that way at all.
And I think like for a woman, when a woman knows, like obviously you're getting referrals here. So when you make a woman orgasm, and when you're like, you can feel that connection, that pleasure there, she's going to want more of it. So it's kind of like not rushing the first go and having, okay, just this can build into more. And so it's like, can I slow down a little bit? Can I ask those questions? How do I explore this to actually really get that orgasm? Because then she's going to want more of you, rather than kind of coming into the bedroom, flicking the bean a little bit, and then just getting her off when it's like, okay, like, is this done now? When women want that prolonged pleasure.
Yeah, if I like her. So if I get along with her and actually enjoy her company when we're hanging out, then for me the sex gets better, because I know more about her body, and we can like do more variations of things, role play, and then I trust her too. So for me, it's my comfort as well. If I don't like her that much, I just see it as like, if you come to my store, my food's gonna be good. So for me, it's like a service that it's like high delivery rate. Yeah. So for me, it's like that was a standard I kept for myself during that time. I don't do that anymore, guys. But during that time, that was a standard I kept, and I took pleasure in it, and I had a kind of maybe a sense of validation from it. But I think my point is, if you take the time to learn this stuff, if you're a single guy, it helps, because women will come back to you. Because it's like, imagine if you're the people that you hook up with, you only have a what's this? 35% close rate. So 35% of the time you get off, and the other times you don't. As a guy, you feel frustrated, right? You'd be like, damn, there's this one girl who always gets me off. Of course, they're gonna all go to her, right? But we don't know what that feels like because we get 95% of the time we get off pretty easily. So we can't really understand what it's like for women. And I think just imagine walking in her shoes, then you'll know how important this is. So maybe if you need to, I tell my clients, take a tantra class. Go to a retreat, even as a single guy, just they have a retreats for single guys too, or get an intimacy coach. Sometimes they're just so nervous they can't get it up, or they're not comfortable in that situation where they can have to be comfortable but also perform to some degree. And I think it takes practice. And I think most men never take the time to figure that out. They just figure out how to get the girl, get off, and then they kind of like go through this phase and this whole missing piece of the puzzle. They never figure it out. Have you experienced that with men, or do you think, like, what's your experience with men that figuring this part out?
A couple of recently, what the roadblocks have been is kind of like that first, okay, you've met the girl, now how do I take her home, or how do I ask for a number? It's like that middle part that I've noticed a lot. And honestly, like for men, you just want to be yourself, and you just want to relax. I think so many men try too hard. They're trying to find all these playful, flirtatious, really horny messages to try and get the girl, when also all she really wants is for you to be interested, for you to like be interested about her life, find her attractive, feel safe, and she's going to be more attracted to you. When like a lot of men I see try and come in like, oh, will this flirting line be the best for me? Or like, I can't think of any top of my head, but like, like you're as hot as the fire, you're as hot as a bonfire, or something like that, kind of. And I just, from my experience, it doesn't really work. It can be playful later on and when you're already in conversation, but some, I think, just maybe a lot of tech nerdy guys use that because that's all they've been taught, or that's all they know. When all a woman wants is for you to be present, make eye contact, and just genuinely be interested in the conversation, not just the physical appearance. Of course, obviously men are attracted first by the physical appearance, but when you can let a woman know and she feels that, it's like, oh, okay, there's a bit of conversation, there's a bit of back and forth. You've got so much of a closing rate here for actually get her number or to take her home, because there's been like a bit of a mutual connection rather than just like trying to use these pickup lines that are not really getting anywhere.
Yeah. Okay. So to be fair, I think that some of the guys just don't know how to be present and have that flowy conversation. They actually run out of things to say. So I think the popular conception of the pickup guys is that you guys are manipulating, or you have all these lines. But I see it as like these lines are just building blocks for them to like figure out how to be talkative and bring out their personality. So I think there's a big problem with the dating coach industry, which is like, use these lines, get her laid. Like that's the marketing, right? Mm-hmm. Get laid. But if you think about it, like the lines are just like windows or guideposts to the truth of that interaction. Here's how to tease her a little bit. Here's how to push and pull. Here's how to maybe make a statement of empathy. Here's maybe a way to tell your story in a way that isn't so boring. I had a guy recently, he said, the model girl was asking him, what do you do? He's like, oh, I like work on the computer. I talk to people like 5 minutes a day. It just sounded like he hated talking to people. Like, bro, you can't say that, And then through our exploration, we found out he does Muay Thai and he dances salsa. I'm like, yo, it's like I dance at night and I beat people up during the day. But no, actually, I take martial arts. That's attractive. But oh yeah, I don't like talking to people. I talk to people 5 minutes a day. That's boring. So I think most of my clients, at least, are just good guys that don't know how to have conversations. And then this is the next step, which is once you get the girl on dates, how do you continue that sales cycle where you close completely and she has a great experience from the moment she meets you to the moment she's like, okay, maybe I'll be your girlfriend. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I love on like kind of the start of that, when I work with clients wanting to date and exploring opening themselves up to dating, I always suggest going to environments, to whether that's a sports event, a networking event, your favorite cafe, are going somewhere where you enjoy going, and then you're meeting someone in that same environment. So you've already got mutual interest. So for example, if you're meeting someone at tennis or at the gym, you're both there, you're both disciplined, you're both into looking after your body. There is such a range of conversations that can be started from a mutual alignment and enjoyment in the gym, for example. And then using that's naturally going to make him feel a lot more, gosh, he's actually replying to my conversations, and there's actually a little bit of back and forth here when you're in an environment that you already feel comfortable. Like if someone doesn't go to the gym, I would never suggest to go to the gym to pick up girls. If you are, if you're often sitting behind the computer, what are 2 things outside where you feel comfortable? And go and put yourselves into those scenarios, keep doing exposure therapy, and you'll naturally notice that you'll have more confidence in those environments. Then that's when you can pick up a girl. I guess that would be like the start of opening into dating.
Yeah, I would add pick things that have good ratios of the girls you like, right? Because I enjoy martial arts, but it's like 2% women. Or like if you go to a sports bar, most sports bars are mostly guys, especially like it's like 10% girls. So, but if you do yoga, when I took my first salsa class, I'm like, oh, I love this. Screw the girls. I love to dance. Like I started dancing. That's how I started my salsa thing. So I think just if you're in front of a computer all day, step out of your comfort zone and do something that may have a better ratio and maybe something you like that you haven't tried before. And who knows, maybe you'll find a new hobby. Okay. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about maybe some health issues, because I had pelvic pain for about 5 years, and most people don't know this about me. And during that time, I learned so much about the pelvic floor. I learned that some women can't have orgasms because they have tight trigger points in the pelvic floor, and basically they're in pain. Actually, I met a few girls recently that they tell me they have trouble having sex because it's so painful. And then that also got me thinking about sex as you're aging. At some point, I think, I forget the stats, but like I think a really high percentage of couples, at some point, one of the couples, the age catches up to them where physically they cannot have sex anymore. And at that some point, what do you do? Have you had those experiences with clients where some health issue prevents someone from enjoying?
I don't have too much of the age being an issue. I've had clients from 60 years old and they're still at it like rabbits. So it's not more so of an age that I personally see. However, I know it does exist. More so, my speciality is in the pelvic pain or erectile dysfunction for men. And erectile dysfunction, I had a client recently, and so my work, I do a lot of somatic therapy. So it's actually coming back to the emotional body. And so, for example, this client, when he was like around, in his 20s, he was in experience with a girl, and I think he finished too fast, or he couldn't get hard, and she has shamed him, and she has like said, I haven't come here for this, and kind of bad mouthed. We don't think in our 20s how much of an impact that experience had on him and himself. And so even though we forget about these experiences, he's been in the most rawest, vulnerable, uncomfortable situations where he cannot get hard, and he has had a female push him down. Okay, we go on through life, we learn, we get better, but still that root cause and that little seed is still there. And so it was like about 15 years later that the erectile dysfunction kept happening in the relationship. And we worked on many breathwork exercises. We work on the psychology of it. And it actually came back to like when we do some somatic work, it's like, do you know what, Katie? It's like when I was in my 20s, I had this experience, and this girl, XYZ. And he said what had happened. And when you kind of like neutralize that discomfort and rewire that pattern in your brain to be differently, then you bring that down into the body through breath work, through tantra exercises, then you're able to recreate that pattern. And that's just one example of what happens, of why erectile dysfunction happens. And it's often a lot for a man, like he's getting in his head and he's thinking he can't perform. But when you actually can blend the emotional and physiology between it, it actually brings, you feel a lot calmer within yourself, and then you bring that calmness and ease into the bedroom.
Interesting. So what happened with that client?
So after it took like about a month of working together, we did tantra practice based exercises, a lot of breath work, and taking off, it was with his wife as well, taking out the pressure of needing to get hard or needing to finish. And one of the exercises was getting her to worship his soft cock. And so this then makes him feel, oh, she loves my soft cock. It doesn't need to be hard. So he's relaxing. His mind's not running around. And then naturally, he gets hard over time because he's actually connected to the feelings and not just in his head. And this is really common for any type of scenario in the bedroom. It's not, the more that you're in your thoughts and your thinking, it can kind of take us off track a little bit, but the more you can actually come back to your breath, just like such as a simple exercise is deep breathing. So before you, like when you're in the shower or before, like when you're masturbating by yourself, is literally just placing a hand on your stomach and doing 10 breaths in and out to notice your stomach rising. And so if you're focused on the rise and fall of your stomach as you're pleasuring yourself or as you're standing there, you're going to be more connected to your sexual energy rather than thinking, okay, oh my God, I've got to perform. I need to come into this. I'm not going to get hard. When you kind of take that out a little bit, focus on this. And so over a month, we focused on those exercises with himself, with his wife, and then just rewired the patterns around his beliefs about what it meant to him when he couldn't get harder, when he had a soft cock. And he kind of like built a newfound love for his own penis throughout this whole process.
Yeah, cool. Your approach is so different. That's cool. I did a lot of research on this one because my pelvic pain was related to an injury, but I noticed with my clients, disclaimer, I'm not a medical professional, but I do read a lot of medical literature. So I think 10 to 20% of the time it's a medical problem, like there's not enough blood flow or there's some anatomical issue. In those cases, medication can help, right? Based on my research. 70 to 80% of the time, it's either mental or there's a muscle restriction, but the muscle tightness restriction comes from stress or anxiety related to the mental stuff. So when you say somatic therapy, it's the idea of the mental and physical interacting. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those times I would say, try these things, try releasing your internal pelvic floor, go to internal pelvic floor specialists, see if those muscles are over tight from years of stressful work. I teach them where the trigger points are in the abdominal muscles. And then you look into what you just said, the mental stuff. How do you think about your sex? How do you think about your sexual organs? How do you think about your partner? A lot of my clients get nervous. They get nervous because it's like the first time they've been with a girl, or it's a girl that they really liked and they can't perform that way. So I think don't do the surgeries, don't do the medication until you figure out the mental and the physiological relationship to the mental. Absolutely. Most people actually jump to surgery because they want that quick solution. They're like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and then it ends up being like permanent damage, or like you can't go back on it. I think the majority of guys that can't get it up, there's a more natural solution. I would say 80%. Try the 80% because there's no side effects to those things. You can just try them and see if they work. Mm-hmm. And then if it is a medical issue, then you pursue that route. But I would say that's the last resort. That's the last thing I would do, and the sequence of things to do.
Yeah. And on that as well, like I've seen a lot of clients who have taken like antidepressant medication or anxiety medication. This takes such a big part in erectile dysfunction, in men and women, in issues in the libido and in the bedroom, because we're actually switching off parts of ourselves. And we have that medication, but then we think, okay, well, this is not working, so I'm going to take another medication. You've powered all this up when you actually haven't got to the root core and the root issue. And that's one of my specialities within somatic therapy, is actually getting to the root cause and the root issue. It might not always make logical sense, but for when clients are coming in with more of a physical, like say erectile dysfunction issue, I always ask, have you been to the doctors? Have you done blood tests? Have you done the medical tests? And if all of that has come back, yes, the doctors have said everything's fine, I know then it's more of a somatic, emotional, or physiology in the body. And then that's what I work with. And that's what I'm trained in as a sexologist, to go to the deeper core of it. Obviously, I'm not a medical doctor myself, but more on the holistic side. And look, it works.
I have two more questions for you. One of these is for one of the girls I used to date. She tells me she's never had orgasm before. Beautiful girl, has great sexual skills, but she has trouble having orgasm. How would you approach that client? How would you help her?
As a female or a man, as yourself?
Oh, she's a girl, as a female.
So from me to a female, because I would approach it differently. For a mum, it's kind of same, but I would get her to use like a glass wand. I've usually got one at my desk. I don't have one here, but it's just like an internal dildo, and really start building a relationship with the internal vaginal walls in her body through slow, controlled pleasure. And like same again, calming down the mind, putting some soft music on and coming into presence and feelings with the body, and then exploring all the different types and angles from the G-spot to the cervix inside of her. And what this is start building arousal within her own self, and just to be able to build that like it's not skin to skin unless you're using your finger, but building that relationship with her own body. And then from there, then that's when we build on, okay, like what does we come into add into the mind? What does, when you were growing up, who told you that sex was wrong, that it was bad, it was shameful, that it's something that you do behind closed doors? Have to rewire those beliefs in your mind. And then when you've rewired those beliefs, come back to this pleasure, then you start doing things that are going to really boost that. So it's like using, if we were talking about the clitoris now, using the stimulation that can really get you to that 80% and then stopping. Then coming back to more internal pleasure, then going between the two, but not actually intentionally getting off to climax, just edging, just like for men, and building that arousal. Then after, obviously this is over a couple of weeks experience, then by the end you would notice when you're at that 80%, and because we've rewound the mind, we've built a relationship with the body, she knows it's like, okay, I've got nothing to be scared of anymore. I'm allowed to have this experience. I'm allowed to feel my pleasure, and getting over that 80-90% and letting herself relax and feel to go into that orgasm, rather than rushing yourself thinking, oh, I can't orgasm, I'm not good enough, I'm never going to be able to do this. When we have that negative self-talk in our mind, it's not going to help anyone. So it's like doing the exercises and the practices that are really going to support that process.
Yeah, that's great. I've noticed that all the girls I've met that have trouble orgasming or have never orgasmed, they have some type of sexual trauma, or they have some type of mental block from the past that's not allowing them to go there.
Absolutely. And this is so common. 1 in 3 women have experienced some sexual abuse, sexual trauma at some stage in their life. And it actually switches you off from feelings. So there is probably more than half the population of women walking around like robots. They don't know what pleasure is. They don't know how to feel. They don't know how to connect to their sexual energy. And that's just because in the younger years, an experience has happened and closed them off. You know, in the tissues, we store trauma, we store emotion. And when we close ourselves off, then how we show up in relationships can come out as fiery or angry or not orgasming or not even wanting pleasure. I see in female clients, you know, they haven't wanted sex. They're in a relationship, but they just don't want sex. They love him, but they just don't want it. And that's just because their body doesn't know what real pleasure and real feelings are like. Because, you know, from the younger years, if you've just been having sex when you were drunk, or you were just doing it when you didn't really want to, your body's created patterns and habits that you're here for the man, you're here for just to perform, you're here just to spread your legs for him. And so if that in the younger years, that's what we've held on to, that deep on the layers is what's going to be coming out later in life. So it's like about, okay, this did happen to me and I've never spoken to anyone about it. Am I in a safe relationship where I can have this conversation? And what do we actually need to do to build this back together? So we can have yummy intimacy? Because often what happens, and not a lot of the time, not all the time, but, you know, a man wants his intimacy, wants his pleasure. So if he's constantly year after year not actually getting anything, this is when his eyes start wandering elsewhere. So like to avoid that also for the man is supporting her to get help, to see an intimacy coach. Inside of the School of Sensuality, I teach a lot of this, of all those exercises that I've shared, where women can really come into a space where they're not feeling pressured and they're just allowing themselves to connect with their body. And it's like building a new skill, like how many times you need to go to the gym to be able to lift 100 kilos. You know, you're going to be a repetition over time. Same with your body. If you do these exercises that I teach, 2-3 times a week, in a week, you'll be able to feel a lot more relaxed. It's like, oh, wow, I actually want sex. I've never felt this before, Katie. My husband loves me right now. But it's like about building those steps throughout that. And it is, it's a bit of a journey. It's not just like a one session and it's done. If your body has been feeling like this for years, it's not going to take years to undo, but it's going to take a bit of commitment over a couple of months. But then on the other side, you've got so much pleasure and joy that you didn't even know existed.
Yeah, this is great. I'll just add one small piece, which is when I was massaging her, I noticed she had really tense muscles, abdominal muscles and pelvic floor muscles. And people don't realize, like, if you hold your fist like this for years, it's not going to unclench overnight. You have to slowly, and that's what's happening when you're tense or there's a trauma that hasn't been released. It's like that muscle has been tense for years, and eventually it gets to a tipping point where symptoms start occurring. So it's not just sexual health; it's like health in general. Okay, great. Now, last question would be, are there any resources? Because there used to be a lot of resources, but YouTube policies have changed. So if a guy wants to get better at this, where would he go to find, like, how would he, let's say I don't know anything. What's the best way to stack my learning process so I can learn this quickly?
So there is, like, I know there's sexual kung fu and
what's sexual kung fu?
Yeah, sexual kung fu on YouTube. And there's 2 YouTube channels. I'll send them over so you can pop them in. There's a couple of YouTube channels where they're actually teaching men. And I also have the Date Night Lounge, where inside the Date Night Lounge, I teach couples and men how to give a pussy massage. For a woman, how to go down on a man. And I teach all the depths of foreplay and building up that in anticipation inside my Date Night Lounge as well. And then, if you're really committed, you really want to go to it, it's just like having a coach, having someone who knows what they're doing, who can support you, who is non-judgmental and is really here to, like, support you in your pleasure. Because, like myself, and I know every intimacy coach wants everyone to have more pleasure and intimacy in a non-judgmental, fun, playful way. And so you're really going to get that out of the other side. And I think something I'd love to add on there as well is of course, feeling embarrassed and feeling, anxious about the subject is so normal. But how much, like, can you allow yourself to kind of step into that discomfort a little bit and then to see what's possible on the other side? Because if you never open the door, you don't know what's going to be inside.
Yeah, that's great. That reminded me of a question. There's what they call sexual surrogates that you can hire. Is that different than an intimacy coach?
I guess would it maybe more hands-on, a sexual? Yeah.
They actually get in bed with you and they teach you how to be.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
So I've done that work previously, and I do that work sometimes with only couples. So with couples, I will teach the man how to give the woman a yoni massage, a pussy massage, and vice versa. So that's something that I do with couples. But then individually, of course, and I think that's also the beauty within, adult industry workers, is like there was also some girls in Tantra as well who will bring themselves into a healthy experience and act like, it's a proper dating experience where the man is actually going to learn so much. And honestly, that's like the best way to do it, because she's very deeply experienced. You're not going to feel intimidated, and you're actually like, whoa, I've learned all of this. Now I can actually go and implement this into my own life as well. So I think there is similarities between both. And I think every coach or every therapist does something different as well.
Yeah, I think it's so useful, right? Because most guys just think, I can go to a hooker or whatever, but it's so different. The sexual surrogacy coach gets in bed with you and teaches you how to be present and be intimate with her. It's not just like the sexual techniques. And a lot of guys have intimacy issues because they never actually sat there and felt fully what it's like to have that sexual energy with another human being. Yeah. And they actually get scared and they're like, this is weird, I can't do this. And I think those coaches are really helpful. Unfortunately, there's this negative stigma to their work, but really I think their work is transformative, because where else would you go to get that? It's so hard to find someone to be able to help you with that.
Yeah. Like, I guess and I completely agree with you, and, being so deep into the world of intimacy as well. I feel like also potentially like play parties or tantra events, going to those kind of spaces, or conscious sexuality events are really going to support the process as well. And in those spaces, people think it can be really intimidating when you first step in, but honestly, everyone in that realm is so open. They're so welcoming. Like if you're not hard, no problem. You know, there's just such a supportive community and such a supportive angle to, I guess, to get curious and play. But obviously that does take a next level to actually go and put yourself into a crowd of people in the most liberated ways.
Yeah, that takes some courage for sure. I found that I haven't hung out that much in those communities, but most of them are pretty nice. They're pretty chill. Okay, where can people find more about you if they want to continue their education in this area?
Of course. So I am Your Couples Intimacy everywhere, YouTube, Instagram, and I have my date night lounge as well. I'll send you over the links and we can pop them all in there. So, yeah,
single guys, are my program good at that? Would they feel like I'm the only single guy here? Like, would that be weird?
No, I do private. So in the date night lounge, it's more of a self-paced courses and learnings and lessons. So I suggest this, like, you know, when they're on their lunch break or they've got 10 minutes to just sit there scrolling, just go and click a video on.
Was that like a course?
Yeah, courses and audios. So it's like, you know, when you're having your lunch, you're like, oh, okay, where am I going to go to be dating tonight? Just click on a video. You're going to learn a lot in 10 minutes because I'm really, you know, there's no fluff. You direct straight to the point. Okay, what can I learn here? And then I do private one-on-one coaching. So it's not in group sessions, one-on-one for males or one-on-two for couples.
Remotely, right?
Yeah, remotely and in person as well.
Okay, but in person, they'd have to be in Thailand?
Yes, or I travel, so sometimes I'm in Australia or in London.
Okay, great. I'll include links below. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.